Hi there and welcome to the fourth and final video in this shed build series where we're going to be building the door and installing the door on my brother's shed. So what you can see us doing right now is actually constructing the door. We're just doing this on the floor because we don't have a workshop, and this is very simple. We've actually missed the first bit here, which was gluing these 7 pieces of cladding together. We clamped these for a few hours just to let the glue go off. And right now what I'm doing is I'm adding a little frame to the back to kind of solid this up. So I'm again using offcuts of the cladding here. So there's going to be a piece on the top, a piece at the bottom, a piece on either side, one along the middle, which you'll see me putting on in a minute, and then 2 diagonals to stop the door from sagging. Okay, so these have been glued and then they've been screwed with, I believe these were 25mm screws. One thing I will say at this point is we're using ripped down pieces of cladding to build this frame on the back. If I was going to do this again, I would probably use something slightly thicker, nothing major, but potentially just some 2x1, which would have been, you know, around 5 to 7mm thicker than this stuff. So it would have just given the door a little bit more rigidity. Okay, so what you can see me doing now is cutting these diagonal pieces, and the left hand side, the low side, that's the hinge side, and it goes up to the lock side. And what this is going to do is it's going to stop the door from sagging. So obviously when you've got the door open, there's going to be more weight on the lock side when it's open, and that could sag over time. These diagonals are going to stop that from happening. So you can see here I'm gluing every single piece of wood, and then I'm screwing into every single piece of cladding on every piece of wood on the frame. So there you go, pretty straightforward. And once that's done, we can go offer it up into the opening and see if it fits. Now obviously it doesn't fit straight away. These are full boards, and these were just probably around 10 or 15mm wider than the opening itself. So as you can see, it doesn't fit, but it's not far off. We're not that bad on the top as well. It's a little bit out, so it's touching at the left hand side. There was a gap at the right, so that needs sorting out. But first things first, I'm going to plane the sides down and actually make this fit in the opening. What you will notice here is I'm only taking off a small amount at a time. I'm taking around 1/2 mil at a time, and the reason for that is this sort of tongue edge here was a little bit flimsy. I didn't want to risk spelching it or damaging it, so I just took it nice and easy. At the end of the day, you can always take a little bit more off. You can't put it back on, so I just thought err on the side of caution here. Just take a little bit off at a time. Just make sure that we're not overdoing it and we're not damaging the door at all. But yeah, as you can see, we're getting there now. I'm just going to take one more little bit off here, I think, just a little bit thicker, because we're going over the side piece of timber there now. And as you can see, I'm putting it in upside down, which I've quickly realised, flipped it back over. And we're getting closer now. It's nearly fitting in the opening. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take off the other side, which is the tongue side. You can also see here that my brother's adding on some corner trim. So this again is just more cladding ripped down, and he's just pinning that on to the corners just to tidy everything up. So I'm going to be moving on to planing the tongue off now. So exactly the same process. I left this on 1mm here and just planed it off a little bit thicker. And as you can see, we put it back in the opening. This fits now, and what I'm doing here is I've just got a piece of wood at the bottom there, and I'm using a bolster chisel to just lift it up. And then I'm just marking the top there to take that a little bit off to even that top up. And I'm also going to cut the bottom off. So a couple of little bits of planing, little bits of cutting, and then the door should fit perfectly after this point. Okay, so here we go. We're going to pop it in, and I'm going to wedge it up again. And as you can see, that top there is perfect. So what I need to do now is I need to kind of wedge the door in place. Essentially what's going to happen now is I'm going to get it to exactly where I want it, and I'm just going to fit the hinges straight onto the door and the shed with the door in situ. So you can see here at the bottom, I'm just going to pack this up with a few pieces of wood, sit the door on top, and we're just about there. But I'm going to lift it a tiny bit more, I think, just to close that gap up. What I was always taught was to have a gap that's around the thickness of a £1 coin all the way around the door. So that's generally what I try to do. And you can see here then I've put a couple of packers either side. I've got the top just where I want it. Those packers are going to hold it in place, and that's going to make it really easy for me now just to fix these hinges in place without that door moving. So first things first, I'm going to mark the hinge. I think I marked this about 7 inch from the top. And then I'm going to use a pencil to mark the holes there and just quickly give them a little pilot drill with my cordless drill and a drill bit. You can see there, I'm just going to pilot drill those holes. And then I'm going to fix the hinge in place. Now the hinge side here, the bit that I'm fixing now, I'm using slightly longer screws. So I think these were 30 or 35 mil screws. And obviously these are going into the timber studwork behind, so these want to be a little bit stronger. They're going to be taking the weight of the door. And then the screws that go into the bit on the door, I'm using the smaller screws that we use to build the frame. So I believe these are 20 or 25 mil. These actually do poke through a little bit on the other side of the door, but we filed the ends down just to make sure there was no sharp edges. But as you can see, this is really, really simple. Just mark up from the bottom again. Bang, 4 screws in. And then put the screws along the actual hinge piece onto the door. Yeah, it's just not very complicated whatsoever. And you can see we're going to remove the packers, open it up, and we have a fully working door. So that's how you hang the door, guys. Really nice and easy. And as you can see, it's working exactly as it should do. So my brother's gone inside there to check that out. I'll go in and have a little look as well. And I've got to say, really, really happy with that. Okay, so we've had a little bit of a tidy up, and you can see how this is looking now. And I've got to say, you know, for a cheap shed build, you know, in my brother's yard, with no experience really of building one of these before, I think it's looking pretty decent. So at this point, there are just a couple more finishing touches, and me and my little lad coming back the next day, when my brother was at work, we put him a little dad's shed sign on. And we also added a simple bolt onto the door just so you can lock the shed on an evening. And yeah, pretty simple, just a few screws. Put the bolt through the end bit here. Fix that in place, and that's that done. Very, very straightforward. So this is screwed at the minute. I think my brother's probably going to put some bolts in just to secure that a little bit better. But there we go, as you can see, Dad's shed. You can see that gap on the door as well there, looking really nice and even. So I'm really happy with how this is looking. We'll just have a little look inside to see how he's currently using it. So this is just the day after. He's chucked a few bikes in there. But I do know that my brother wants to add some OSB around the inside of here. He's going to be putting some shelves up. Obviously got to clean a few of these bits of wood that are lying about up. And he's going to put a couple of vents in the back as well, just to allow a little bit of air to circulate in the shed to avoid any sort of damp over time from happening. But yeah, there you go. That's the inside of the shed, and I'm sure you'll agree it's looking pretty good. And this is the final shed itself. So pretty happy with the result here. This is the first time I've ever done a shed like this. And yeah, guys, I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and I will see you in the next one.